never, all caps, what's the word? Spin. Absolutely.
Word, spin.
That is a four-letter word, too. Or if I catch any of you guys doing that.
Take it serious.
Welcome to the Golding Group Neo Marketing Podcast, a bi-weekly discussion of best practices, latest trends, and modern techniques for professional business communication, including advertising, marketing, digital channels, social media, public relations, and alternative options.
Good morning, Kyle. How are you, sir?
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty doggone good. For those of you who don't know us, I'm Pritch Pritchard. This is Kyle Golding, and we are partners in the Golding Group. And, you know, this past, recently, I'm still adjunct teaching.
Right.
So one class.
You can't get Pritch to
online.
give up the education. It's just in his blood.
Well, this was too good an opportunity to pass up.
Well, it is the University of Oklahoma, one of the greatest football programs there ever was.
Well, let's struggling a little bit this year.
They're going to get it
that's
together.
A whole
They're going to
different,
get it together. They're going to make it happen.
It's a whole different ball game. Anyway, so we've been talking about media relations, and I realized that you and I haven't talked about media relations for a while.
Yeah.
And the particular point that I made when the class last addressed this was rules of engagement.
Okay.
Military term, right? It's when can you engage with the enemy?
Right. Which in the military usually means shoot them.
Shoot them, right? When can you shoot?
When can we kill them?
Right. But in this case...
Not a PR term.
Not a PR term. But I turned it into a PR term because rules of engagement, that kind of the basics of how you deal with the media.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got a baker's dozen
and
for you.
And it definitely is engagement.
Engagement.
It's not throwing things at them. It's not even pitching.
Right.
It's engaging the members of the media to participate with you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I got a baker's dozen for you.
Excellent.
Okay. The first one is the camera's always on.
Camera's always on.
Camera's always on.
Microphones are always on.
Always on. Exactly.
Right.
How many of those hot mics have we heard? Somebody just got tagged in Washington on it, too, and I can't remember.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. So, and Ronald Reagan's.
Yeah, the notorious Ronald Reagan, yes.
That great one of his. But, yeah, I mean, and in an interview, particularly with a broadcast interview, you got a camera crew, maybe a camera and sound. But anyway, and typically when they're done, they take the camera off the sticks and put it on the floor, right? And I haven't personally been affected by this, but I've seen colleagues who have.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're about to do.
Camera's still running, and now we have a conversation that looked like it was off the record, right? We're just talking here. That suddenly ended up being on the air.
Yeah, be cognizant of your surroundings and who you're talking to. When I worked in the music industry, obviously we were always surrounded by microphones, and so we heard everything anyone ever said about anyone.
Yep, absolutely. So the camera's always on, okay? The corollary to that is the interview ain't over till it's over.
That is right.
Until they're in the car leaving the parking lot and you're waving farewell.
That's right.
The interview is still on. So in that conversation after the formal interview, you're probably going to get hit with a speculative question,
I think
a personal
before
opinion.
And after the interview.
Yeah, before and after.
Yes,
right?
for sure. Anytime you're in a room with a journalist, right?
That's
your top
the interview.
Process. Yep.
The interview from the moment they walk through the door to the moment they drive out the parking lot.
100%.
It'll save you. I guarantee you, it'll save you. The third one. Never say anything you wouldn't want to see on the evening news or the newspaper the next morning.
This should be brutally honest, folks.
If you don't want to see it, don't say it.
It's not the journalist's job to protect you from yourself. And it's not the journalist's job to make sure that everyone likes you. It's their job to report what you say.
Yeah.
And if you say it.
And if you say it, fair game, right? So never say anything you wouldn't want to see in the next day's headlines.
That's right. And when you're unsure or don't know the answer, there's only one real answer.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead now.
Oh, okay.
You're jumping ahead now. You're reading my notes. We'll go there. I don't know is an acceptable answer.
Always is.
Always. but you immediately have to say, but I'll find out and get back to you.
That's right. That's the continuation of the engagement.
Or if you can't answer it, say so. Tell the reporter why. In my case, most of the time when I couldn't answer a question in the military, it was because the information was classified. But there is business proprietary information. Sure. There's competitive advantage stuff that you need to skirt
also,
sometimes.
NDAs and other things in place that sometimes bind participants.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So and
all of that's legitimate.
It's all legit. And so don't be shy. I can't tell you that, and this is why.
Yeah.
All right? I signed an NDA, whatever. I think that's a great point. I'm going to use that.
There you go.
There you go. There are kind of 3 levels of attribution.
Okay.
One is on the record.
Sure.
And I recommend everybody stay on the record.
As
and
much as possible.
That means that you can be quoted by name and position and organization.
Yes.
Okay?
Official representation.
Official representation. So little Bobby Pritchard's name is on the headline of New York Times because it was on the record.
There you go.
If you've been in the business a while, there's a thing called on background, which means that they can attribute to you generally a Navy official said. Right? And then there's a thing called off the record. Right. Off the record in my 25 years, 23, I cheated. In the military, I used off the record once.
Okay.
And it was because a reporter was getting ready to outline the entire offensive and put soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines in danger.
Which would be a good reason to try to make sure that wasn't done unnecessarily, for sure.
So I'm of the opinion there is no such thing as off the record.
And it's one of those things, too, I think probably the most misconception about. People see it in TV and movies, and they really think that you can just state off the record, and then what else comes out of your mouth that not only will the journalist not quote you, but somehow wouldn't find another way to verify or utilize against you. So, off the record is misconstrued a lot,
big time.
And at the end of the day, if you're really doing your job properly, there's no need, outside of a really extreme example like you gave, to have conversations off the record. Literally, for me, off the record conversations are, how's the weather? Did you see the thunder last night? Maybe we have a friend in common. If you know the journalist, hey, don't I know your sister Becky or something like that? That's fine. Those are the kind of things you can have a conversation with someone, and you don't anticipate it showing up in the interview because it has no relation to it. And even if it did, people would say, "This is boring. Why is this here?"
Right. But it also puts restrictions on the reporter.
Yes.
The reporter cannot use that information to source the story.
An ethical one. Journalist.
Right.
And I think that's another gray area now. Often days, this is a great example. We're here interviewing each other, essentially having conversations with each other. Neither one of us is acting as a journalist. Neither one of us are professional journalists. There are a lot of people in the world who interview people who aren't trained professional journalists, who have not been taught that ethical pantheon that's how the world should work. And so just because they have the camera and a microphone and they ask you questions doesn't make them a journalist, and you can't assume so.
Right.
Outside of, I work for the New York Times or the Daily Oklahoman, or and this is an official interview on their behalf. Yes.
So stay on the record. And if you, there are very few instances where I wouldn't have felt comfortable letting a reporter quote me. So just stay out of trouble.
I agree.
Stay on the record.
Yes.
Right. Here's one. Never, all caps. Never. What's the word?
Spin.
Absolutely.
4-letter word, spin.
It is a 4-letter word, too. And boy, if I catch any of you guys doing that.
Take it serious, folks. This is why Pritch hates this word so much, because the practice is very unethical,
absolutely. And by spin, I mean to purposefully deceive so as to put a positive face on things.
Another misconception, because entertainment has drawn these different ideas to the general public about the role of a PR practitioner, and the idea that somehow spin is their job.
Right.
Spin is not their job. No. It's the pollution of their job.
It's the pollution of their job.
It's the prostitution
of their job. Absolutely.
Right.
Prostitution is a good word as well.
There are things that need to be communicated. There are things that you want to communicate. There are things that the journalist and the public want to know, deserve to know, need to know, and you should be putting those things out. Now, sometimes there are things that you don't feel comfortable communicating. We've already talked about how you can do that as well. But you can't go a step further and in an attempt to sort of throw the journalist off or get them off the case, if you will, with spin by intentionally telling them things that you know are not, that's incorrect, or flat out you just made up in the back of your head in the heat of the moment. That is unethical. And we've talked earlier, we started this whole off with this is engagement with the journalist. You're in collaboration with them. You're in partnership with them. You're being honest and conveying to them so that they can be honest and report to the public. When you are dishonest with them, you are dishonest with the public, and that's where the lack of ethics comes into play.
Oh, when people aren't stupid, people can recognize spin 100 miles away.
For sure. And even more so, 2021 is probably the apex, and 2022 will be even better, of people get when they're being played, and they understand how things really work, and they can find information out when they need to.
Absolutely. So people are not dumb.
No.
Don't forget, this is a central axiom of public relations. Perception is reality.
That's right.
It didn't happen that way. Well, if they think it happened that way, it did.
There you go.
Right? And think about your childhood, right? When I'm sure everybody has gotten tagged at one time or another for something that they didn't do, but try and tell your parents, try and convince them that, their perception is not reality. Is very, very difficult. Everybody out there knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure. There are plenty of things that you read in the media that then a week later or a month later or a year later was retracted because that wasn't the case. And in a period of time after that, people will still tell you, oh, no, this is a fact. No. That was the perception.
Right.
The reality was different, but people will take that perception as fact.
Right. And there's a whole different podcast we could do on misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, which falls into that.
Falls into spin.
Absolutely.
That's right. Don't do that.
Absolutely. And thanks for the segue, because the next tip is, or next basic rule of engagement is tell the truth, even if it hurts.
That's right.
Especially when it hurts.
Rip that Band-Aid off. The truth will come out.
The truth will out. Absolutely.
The only way you can find any advantage of the truth coming out is when it comes from you. No matter what that truth is, obviously you're only nervous about it if it's negative, something that's happened. But the negative event has happened.
Yep.
If this is the reality, it will come out. The real question is, what are you doing about it, and are you owning up to it?
Right, exactly.
Because that's where
huge.
you further dig a hole
Yep.
of perception of your brand and of your et cetera, if you don't do these things in the right way. And there's an opportunity.
Absolutely. There's always opportunity in time of crisis.
An opportunity to quickly turn this back around if you handle the negative situation in a great way.
Right. Absolutely. People are paying attention, especially today.
Right.
People are paying attention. If you even try to shade the truth, you're gonna get caught out.
One of my favorite things my mom would say when I was a very young person is I was rambunctious. I did a bunch of stupid stuff like young boys do. Caught you doing something you weren't supposed to be doing. Now, own up to it, because lying to me will be worse.
Right.
And of course, sometimes when you're young and dumb, you try that whole, it wasn't me, and it's there's the evidence all over your face, and
the house
mom and dad asked because they already knew the answer. They just wanted to see if I would lie to them.
Right.
And sure enough, it was here's the punishment for doing the thing. Here's triple the punishment for lying.
Absolutely.
It's a very basic tenet, which is don't lie to people. But on a professional level, there are practices, public relation practices, in order to deliver bad news.
Absolutely. And the thing about telling lies, it's hard work.
It's hard work.
Because you got to remember the lie.
That's what Will Rogers said. It's easier to tell the truth.
It's easier to tell
you don't have to remember what your lies are.
Right. And then there are those people who would lie when the truth sounds better, but we won't go there.
No.
Okay, absolutely.
Your cover-ups are hard, and cover-ups create essentially additional crimes.
Absolutely.
The original crime, whether it's a crime or not, or just a negative situation, but that's happened. Now the cover-up, because we said earlier, the event is going to come out. The news will come out. So now, if the news comes out, the news or the obviousness of your cover-up,
right,
the obviousness of your spin
of your lie,
will also come about. So that goes back to you've dug yourself a deeper hole, as opposed to taking the proactive route, which has the potential to be positive in the end.
Absolutely, and increase your reputation and credibility. Right. And I like what you said about the penalty is 3 times worse when you lie.
Let me dovetail into this real quick too. Individuals, people out there who are PR practitioners, or if you're a PR student, or for someone who's considering going to PR because you're a young person about to go to college, or maybe you're going to go career change. If your boss instructs you to do any of these things we're telling you not to do, you really need to consider if that's the right working situation for you. Maybe that's not the right boss, and you can move in the company, or maybe that's not the right company because the directive is coming from on high.
Right.
Now there are small things, right? Like, hey, don't talk to the reporter, or don't do this. Okay, but when it comes down to spin, to misinformation, to things that we are classifying as unethical, it's your responsibility as a professional to push back on it. First, try to educate that boss about why that's not how things work. That's not, you really need to convince the person who wants you to do something unethical why the fallacy, and for them to not ever think that again. Because you want them to move forward in a more ethical way. But if they refuse, because I'm your boss and you do what I tell you to, don't.
Right. Well, there's
because you stain yourself.
Absolutely.
As much as you stain the brand, and as much as the brand gets dragged through the mud, if you are seen as the person most unethical in the situation, no one cares that because I was doing it because my boss told me to.
I'm just following orders.
Your next job is going to be nearly impossible to get.
It didn't work in Vietnam, didn't work in Germany. So, that's
why it's so important.
It's crazy.
We're talking about this topic on the podcast. It's as much for organizations to get on board with best practices like this. It is also nearly as important for the individuals commit to it themselves and push themselves, their team, and then their bosses or anyone else outside of who aren't trained PR professionals to understand why it has to be done this way.
2 additional points to your dovetail. One is that you get one but sir, right? And by that I mean you give the boss your advice. Boss says, no, Pritchard, I'm going to do it this way. You get one pushback.
Right.
But, sir, I don't think that's going to work the way you think. And here's why. And if the boss says, yea, verily, we're going to do it my way.
Now you have a decision to make.
Go back to the office, write a memorandum for the record. For the investigation. Right.
See why I cover your own ass.
And the second thing is that you were, as a professional in this business, you're going to be confronted at least once.
Absolutely.
In your career.
For sure.
With that kind of a choice.
For sure.
So,
and it's easier to think about what you will do in that situation now when there's no pressure on you than
absolutely.
in that moment.
Absolutely. Where's your line?
Yes.
And when am I going to stand up and say no?
And it comes down to everyone has it. Everyone has a gut feeling. Everyone has a voice in the back of their head. You've got your training. You have your education. You have your best practices. You're doing things on a regular basis in a great way, in the right way. When your brain goes, whoa, red flag. When your gut tells you, oh, hell no.
Oh, hell no.
And when you realize, again, this is something that's going to stick around your neck, the albatross around your neck moving forward.
Right.
Now you have to make some very hard decisions, probably quickly, about what your future relationship is here. It's easier to find a new job than it is to repair that reputation.
Absolutely. As we used to say, you need to know when you're going to take your collar devices off and put them on the table.
There it is.
Absolutely.
Everyone has to know their line.
Absolutely.
And when you commit it to yourself internally, just never cross it. Understand, lots and lots and lots, hundreds, thousands of professionals in all kinds of fields have been pushed to their line, said no,
and moved on.
Turn in their badge, if you will, moved on. They always, I'll say always, but it works out better.
Yeah.
It works out better than it'll be fine. You can find another job. You cannot repair that reputation that you have slaughtered.
Okay, I got 3 more. Next one is speak in personal terms, not from the viewpoint of the viewer's interest, not the organization.
That's right.
people don't give a whip what the organization thinks or says. It's what matters to them.
Always put yourself in your audience's shoes.
Absolutely. So and speak in personal terms too.
The
Don't use
way
jargon.
To communicate.
Absolutely.
Yes, the clearest communication, simplest, and from person to person.
Person to person.
Not brand to audience.
Right.
Person to person.
Person to person. Second to last one, never argue.
Sure.
We're talking media relations here.
Absolutely.
So don't argue with a reporter. One of the very famous assistant secretaries of defense for public affairs used to say, never argue with a guy who buys ink by the barrel, paper by the ton, or has the keys to the transmitter.
Right.
They're gonna get the last
They're
word.
in control of how that argument plays out, whether
Right.
it's editing video or editing the written word, outside of, well, no matter, even with your own video evidence and everything else, it goes back to perception is reality. What they report will be seen as the reality, so don't provide them the fodder to make you look a certain way by being argumentative, which is also the least effective way of communicating.
Yeah, deep defensive crouch is not going to help you.
It doesn't help, and it doesn't communicate your point at all. It muddies the water.
Right, absolutely. And it's your failure for not communicating clearly enough.
Yes. You are the communication professional. This is your job.
Right.
If you have not done that job well enough, you have to step up and do better.
And take the hit. That's just it. So here's the last one, and this is one of my favorites. Never let an SOB know you know she or he is an SOB. Right?
Yes.
Staying cool. You're on the phone with a reporter who is really obnoxious and pressing hard, and you're just, but I'm not going to argue. I hang up I'm cool. Butter won't melt in my mouth. I hang up the phone, you SOB. But never let them know.
You're a trained professional.
Absolutely.
And if you can't keep your emotions in check, if you're more interested in being argumentative than being a professional who communicates, don't take this job.
Nope. Go to law school.
Find a different, if you want to argue, go be a lawyer. Find a different avenue to work in if your approach is more temperamental and accusatory and argumentative than someone who is interested in communicating as much as possible. Yes. Again, human to human on the basis on the representation of the brand.
There you go. So there's the Baker's dozen.
I like it. It's good.
Basic rules of engagement. We hope they were meaningful for you, and if you just pick one and work with that, we're happy. But we want to hear from you. So give us some feedback. If you've got additional basic ROEs that we haven't talked about here, put them in the comments. Shout at us on social media. Mash the subscribe button. Right. Don't forget to hit the notification button too. And we'll just
hit those thumbs, the hearts, the whole nine.
Do
it all.
Absolutely.
And
Don't
make sure
be shy.
you subscribe so that you never miss an episode.
Exactly. And we know how obnoxious that can sound, but we want you as our audience to continue to get the good gouge, as the Navy would say, the good info. Anyway, until next time, ciao.
Good luck.
This has been the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell a friend, leave a review, and engage with us on social media. Thanks for listening.